In an interview on the podcast The Truth with Lisa Boothe on Monday, March 2nd, President Donald Trump decried the media landscape in the United States. He said the country no longer has a free press. Using the current border crisis as an example of a lack of proper coverage, Trump said that this is not a free press.
We don't have a free press. This is not a free press. This is a press that we have to be very, very smart to get around. But they don't cover bad things if it happens to be bad for Democrats. It's pretty amazing. You take a look at some of the coverage and some of the travesty that's taking place on the border, and the coverage is not commensurate if you look at NBC, ABC, CBS, and, of course, CNN and MSDNC. If you look at those, networks, it's just not covered. It's covered so little. It's amazing. And it's a massive story because it's going to destroy our country.
Over the weekend, Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas made a visit to the southern border in El Paso, Texas, along with a group of senators, but the press was not allowed to cover the trip. Getty Images correspondent John Moore, an award-winning photojournalist, called on the Biden administration to allow media workers to observe U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents operate as a massive surge of illegal immigrants arrives at the southern border. I respectfully ask U.S. Customs and Border Protection to stop blocking media access to their border operations, Moore wrote on Twitter last Friday. I have photographed CBP under Bush, Obama, and Trump, but now zero access is granted to the media. These long lens images were taken from the Mexican side. Moore added in another tweet, "There's no modern precedent for a full physical ban on media access to CBP border operations. To those who might say, cut them some slack, they're dealing with a situation, I'd say that showing the U.S. response to the current immigrant surge is exactly the media's role." Denying the press access doesn't help cover up the truth or facts the Democrats see as detrimental to them. On March 22nd, Project Veritas, an undercover journalism nonprofit, released some images. The leaked images show extremely crowded conditions in the Donna Overflow Detention Facility near the border on the southern tip of Texas, as hundreds of illegal immigrants and minors pour across the border. The facility, composed of several interconnected massive tents, contains 8 pods that hold an average of 3,000 people at any given time. Each pod contains 8 cells, divided by transparent plastic curtains hanging from metal frames. Hundreds of children huddle together under emergency blankets in the jam-packed cells. These are the facts and truth the Biden administration does not want revealed. The establishment media does not want to report on the border crisis because they are all controlled by the Democratic Party. Freedom of the press means that the media should have the right to report news without being controlled by the government. The reality is, America is now losing the freedom of press. Throughout Trump's 4-year presidency, establishment media outlets had been promoting narratives that went against him or his policies, while generally promoting his opponents or critics. Trump had referred to MSNBC, the New York Times, and CNN, among others, as fake news media, and repeatedly criticized them as being wings of the Democratic Party. Last week, Lawrence Silberman, the eminent jurist who was appointed to the D.C. Court of Appeals by Ronald Reagan, said that the Democratic Party is close to controlling the press as he detailed what he described as shocking bias against Republicans. Writing in his dissent in a defamation case called Ta v. Global Witness Publishing, the judge scrapped the landmark 1964 Supreme Court decision, the New York Times v. Sullivan, which has since protected many media outlets from lawsuits. He wrote that the ruling is a threat to American democracy and must be overturned. Even by the imperial judiciary standards of the Warren Court, this case stands out as something of a classic effusion in that court's project of remaking American society to conform with its far-left preferences. There is no question that the case is a watershed. Before New York Times v. Sullivan, the First Amendment protected a free press that was responsible in law for its errors. After and because of this case, the press has anything-goes immunity from almost any mistakes, no matter how damaging. As a policy matter, this may or may not be a prudent development. Constitutionally, the decision is an infamous failure and a disgrace to the judicial role. The increased power of the press is so dangerous today because we are very close to one-party control of these institutions. It should be borne in mind that the first step taken by any potential authoritarian or dictatorial regime is to gain control of communications, particularly the delivery of news. Silberman said the bias against the Republican Party, and not just controversial individuals, is rather shocking today. The most influential papers, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, and even the news section of the Wall Street Journal, are all virtually Democratic Party broadsheets. The orientation of these three papers is followed by the Associated Press and most large papers across the country, such as the Los Angeles Times, Miami Herald, and Boston Globe. Nearly all television, network, and cable is a Democratic Party trumpet. Even the government-supported National Public Radio follows along, he wrote. It is fair to conclude, therefore, that one-party control of the press and media is a threat to a viable democracy. A Gallup poll released in September 2020 suggests that Americans are largely distrustful of corporate mass media. The survey showed that only 9% of Americans trust the media a great deal, while 31% trust it a fair amount. Meanwhile, 33% have no trust at all in the media, and 27% don't trust the media very much. In other polls, a significant number of Americans have blamed mass media for exacerbating the political divide in the U.S. In his writing, Judge Silberman also expressed concern about the influence that big tech wields over how news is distributed, referencing how Twitter limited the spread of a New York Post article about Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden. 20 years ago, Section 230 was passed as part of a federal statute that provides immunity to social media companies like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram from being sued over the material they purvey. Section 230 allows such media companies to operate without being responsible for the content they publish. But the issue is that they want to have it both ways. On one hand, they want the immunity of neutral providers, but on the other hand, they act, and they do so with increasing boldness, as spokesmen advocating and censoring certain points of view. For years, Trump favored Twitter and had amassed nearly 90 million followers before the social media platform suspended him in January. Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Snapchat, and others also moved to suspend the former president. Before leaving the White House, President Trump had suggested repealing Section 230, but had not been successful. On March 21st, Trump's advisor and spokesman Jason Miller said in a new interview with Fox News that President Trump will set up his own social media platform and will return to posting online in 2 to 3 months. According to Miller, the platform will completely redefine the game and attract tens of millions of users. This is definitely good news for Trump to gain back part of his freedom of speech during a time when Americans are living in the rampant cancel culture.